Thank you for having me, and thank you for that introduction. This book is in large part about work, and this chapter is called The Recruitment. Nearly a year had passed. It was now January 2014, and I was sitting with Seth, drinking rosé at the long curved bar of a restaurant in Soho. I had already rejected his offer to join the company twice. My usual negotiation strategy of the soft no, say no to everything but keep the door open, was inspiring a fever of unclear interactions. I'd even visited the office for a day of interviews. The company was run out of 12 luxury apartments in a condo building on the Williamsburg waterfront. A small bronze plaque announced that the original factory building was a prime example of the mysterious Egyptian modernist architectural style, which distinguished it from the sea of new construction cluttering up the area. I later learned that Christina Ricci and Justin Bieber's pastor were tenants. In the lobby, hundreds of parcels teetered in the doorman's nook. Upstairs, in one of the company's dedicated living rooms, a developer used a laser pointer to ask me over and over where I'd put usernames on different pages of the site. Everyone seemed sluggish and confused. Why should we do any marketing at all was the only thing Pete asked me in the brief interval he'd raised his head from doodling. At the end, the boys showed me a video of themselves on stage at a conference, with Seth swerving on the moderator, saying, "Who cares about our monetization strategy? Why are you so obsessed with money?" I agreed it had been a nice moment. Afterwards, looking out at the water from a Kent Avenue bench, I told my friend Roman there was no way I'd ever consider accepting a job at the company. Roman was a queer intellectual, already recruited for $150,000 a year plus unlimited free food, writing art criticism on the side. He also thought the day had been a failure. "These people are disturbing and out of their minds," I said. "No offense, but this company is fucked." Pigeons scuttled across the paving stones. A black plastic bag flew into the sky. The surface of the East River glittered. That night at a gallery in Chinatown, an artist friend told me I was lucky it hadn't gone well. "You would have ended up pregnant with one of their babies," she said. "You would have worked long days in that office, never seeing other people, and started fucking one of them out of boredom, and then you would have ended up pregnant." The image was harrowing and clear. Her eyes had a bright anorexic power, and she was always right about everything. But the next day, when Seth emailed asking for a chance to get feedback on what had gone wrong in the interview process, I agreed to a drink. Just one drink. This was the classic startup maneuver. Failing, then using the failure as an entree to even more action. I think we were both using this logic. The intimacy of already having failed was like the way you could be more honest with certain exes than with any current lover. It was relaxing when a situation was already partially ruined. It was warm inside the restaurant. On the other side of the bar, a trio of Argentinian girls with glossy brown hair and Cartier infinity bracelets texted while forks clinked on china. I want to describe the architecture of this bar, the Bakelite shimmer within the plastic, the surface bending itself back. Seth was pretty, with wide-set eyes like Kate Moss, broad shoulders, and a cozy boy teenage aesthetic, clad in 3 layers of slate-colored fleece and black Nike trainers that looked like they had taken no special effort to acquire. His countenance was a little more femme, a little less brash than your typical startup founder, and this appealed to me. His flip phone sat on the Bakelite bar, begging for comment. Quite conspicuously, Seth did not try to sell me on the company. He simply asked if I believed in God, told me he did too, and recommended a book, The Journalist and the Murderer by Janet Malcolm. The book has a great beginning. Every journalist who is not too stupid or too full of himself to notice what is going on knows that what he does is morally indefensible. My glass of rosé was empty. "Think about it," he said. "A year from now, we could be on a yacht celebrating the IPO." I wasn't sure if I cared about IPOs or even believed in them, but I did know that sometimes I became so anxious about money that a metallic tang filled my mouth and I had to lie down. At that point, all of my family members had been priced out of NYC. I had $538 in my checking account. My health insurance was about to expire. Seth's dark brown eyes glinted with thirst for recognition. I thought of a quote from a philosopher, which said, "The moment you notice the color of another person's eyes, you are no longer in ethical relation to that person." This part is called Y Combinator Fashion Fantasy. Y Combinator was the California startup incubator where, in exchange for 7% equity, X became a real company. Because I was a New Yorker and somewhat delusional, with only a limited understanding of what the incubator actually did, it functioned for me primarily as a fashion fantasy. In the weeks that followed the offer, as I pondered Seth's proposal, it became a mythical zone in my mind. I liked envisioning it as if I were the type of Japanese vintage collector who buried pairs of Levi's 501s underground for patina. That meant everything was excruciatingly high-res, based on a hyper-presence of details that would have been lost on the original characters altogether. My Y Combinator was a next-gen twist on Ivy style that updated the old Wealth and WASP codes for their new economy West Coast versions. The J-Press gets renovated into a Patagonia. People are sandier haired, history is foreshortened, there are fewer natural fibers, motion in clothes is more fluid. But the sense of high economic pressure and burbling power remains the same. Young men in a bounded atmosphere competing to be masters of the universe. At least we got some sun-faded California color in there. Some twill shorts, some light fleece. Covering, or at least kissing, every garment are logos upon logos of companies that never will have been. Every item is somehow even subliminally branded. If not by an embroidered emblem, then by a color or highlight, a strip of reflective 3M yellow flashing out of an unzipped pocket. It's like gang colors in that each cell of contestants are marked by brands representing their speculative business. But since the generation of these symbols is part of throwing one's hat into the competition, and everyone present is an overachiever, increasingly novel versions proliferate. An infinite series of cotton t-shirts with graphics extends through the landscape. One judge stands by a tree, wearing a pale pink tee with an Olympic torch on the front and a stark white apple on the back of the neck. Another has an iridescent bunny, three-dimensionally rendered, with orange, red, and green glowing out from its belly. Mixed in with these are classic nerd memorabilia. A black shirt with jagged white type. You're just jealous because the voices talk to me. There are boxer briefs, hoodies, blonde wood tables, a magenta iPhone charger with a flat cable like a piece of linguine. Clumps of boys are walking in the same direction. 3 boys, 4 boys, and 2 boys, ours. I see a glass dome over all this, with condensation dripping down the inside. An invisible hand picks up the snow globe, gives it a few tentative shakes, and then smacks it hard on the table, shattering the glass. 2 boys crawl out and become my overlords. 6 minutes. This chapter is called Announcement. During all company lunch, a few days after our opening ceremony excursion, Pete took to the dais to announce that we would be announcing our new product to the public in the next couple of weeks, or as soon as possible, whichever came first. Nobody knew what the new product was. Projected on the screen behind him was a photo of a billboard in a downtown Manhattan skyscape with a blank white rectangle where the advertisement would normally be. "This will be our billboard," Pete proclaimed. He was wearing the denim hoodie we had bought together, and its hem intersected his mid-thigh. Engineers bristled all around me. Roman whispered in my ear, "What the fuck is the new product?" I heard Tweedledee say, "They are so unreasonable." Seth sat over to the side, conversing with Zimra, the firm's only true adult. He looked both embarrassed and amused, eyes shining, shoulders slumped. Outside, the wind howled, then quieted, turned blustery. It had been getting colder and colder with each day I worked at the company. I'd been riding black cars both ways to work every day on the company account, barely experiencing the weather firsthand, waiting for somebody to object to this expenditure, but nobody had. The outside world was already becoming more remote. Pete continued to jibber-jabber, flicking through slides. With my spine against the cold marble top of the kitchen island at the back of the room, I looked on at the discomfort of my fellow employees and the awkwardness of the denim hoodie with a burgeoning relish. To me, Pete's outfit was an omen in my favor, the signal of my influence, a minor triumph in advance. 2 white rectangles, the doubled reflection of the blank projected billboard, swam in the shine off my eyeballs. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. After the meeting, I took my time meandering back toward my hole, chatting with people and stealing their snacks. As I walked past the boys' apartment, I could see Pete spitting words at Seth through the open door. He was standing over him with a golf club pointed at the ceiling. Seth was seated on their leather sofa, giggling despite Pete's apparent aggression. Never end a sentence with a preposition. I kept moving. My colleagues were visibly distressed. It's true that the new announcement was ridiculous, but I thought my coworkers were basic for balking at the boys' unreasonable requests. It had been precisely this quality of theirs that had attracted the money in the first place. There was no logical reason they should suddenly turn from hype to rigor. Accordingly, there was no rule that said a real product was better than an imaginary one. Many advertised or well-funded products were never ultimately built, or if they were, never functioned properly, or if they did, never appealed to anyone. For my own sake, I believed I could work with any situation. This was the artist's prerogative. Start from today and turn it all to modeling clay. Use the company as it was for found material. That's it. Thanks, guys.